Hello dear crypto friends, and welcome to today's video in which we are again looking at Bitcoin, at the crypto market in general, at the altcoin market, and try to think of a scenario what would need to happen for a new Bitcoin rally and altcoin rally to occur. What would the prerequisites need to be for that to happen? As you can see, I have opened the Bitcoin 4-hour chart of the current low in the upper half, and in the lower half I have opened the late 2018, early 2019 low in the one-day chart. Here's the 4-hour chart, one-day chart, and we see a remarkable similarity. So it could happen that Bitcoin does such a weird dragged out low as we have already seen it in 2018, right? And we would identify this structure here with this one and this structure here with this one, and it would kind of go down, then go up again, and at some point it would start rising very fast. But of course we don't know, first of all, will this happen? Because if we try to look for some divergences, I don't find any strong hidden or normal bullish divergences in this chart here. Whereas, for example, if I go to the altcoins, is that the altcoins as compared to Bitcoin are having a bullish divergence here. As you can see, there's lower highs in the price and there's higher highs in the RSI. So that is a bullish divergence in the total market cap. But Bitcoin is not having this bullish divergence, which is quite fascinating, right? We can see here lower highs in the price, but also lower highs in the RSI. So it seems that Bitcoin is not quite as bullish as the altcoins. That is the first observation. And if we actually go to the dominance of Bitcoin, if we look at the Bitcoin dominance, we can actually see that the Bitcoin dominance is wobbling around on very low levels here, on quite low levels, and kind of looks as if it was ready for a next drop, right? Because this whole structure here seems to be kind of similar to this structure here. So Bitcoin is showing weakness in the dominance even on these low levels. So I can imagine that the dominance would actually continue dropping in the not too distant future. And that would of course mean that the altcoins will outperform Bitcoin in some way. The altcoins would outperform Bitcoin, which is quite fascinating, quite the fascinating behavior. Now going back to Bitcoin, we see that Bitcoin is still wobbling around these very low levels here. And if I just activate the long-term chart, we see that we are still going sideways after this insane drop. So this reminds me very much of the situation that we had here back in 2015, right? We had this brutal drop. Okay, back then at least Bitcoin was still bouncing, something which Bitcoin just isn't doing anymore. And we had actually a 90% bounce here after hitting the low in January 2015. But essentially we went sideways the whole year. 2015 was one of the most boring and insane years ever, because almost the whole year from January to October, when the next move started, we were just going sideways for 10 months. This was really an ugly year, and there was the second low actually which went even below the first one in January. So this was really ugly, and this kind of reminds me of that situation. So if we are unlucky, we will just wobble around the whole year, and then only at some point in 8, 9, 10 months would we resume the climb. But of course, we would like to know what would need to happen for Bitcoin to resume the climb, right? What would need to happen for that? Because the halving is still far away. The next halving is in March to May 2024. So it's not unreasonable to assume that we will now be in a bear market until 2024, and only at some point after the next halving will we start going into the next cycle. It is not unreasonable to assume something like this. But what would need to happen for our favorite scenario to play out? And our favorite scenario is of course the idea that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves are happening, and that this thing here was a bizarre, long stretched out 5-wave Elliott wave cycle. What would need to happen for that to come true, right? Because that would be something which many people would certainly like. We don't like to wait until 2024 or even 2025 for the next cycle top. We would really like the rally to continue quite soon, because honestly, this top here was kind of pathetic, or this one, no matter what you see as the real Bitcoin top, it was much worse than I would have imagined, because I was using the old long-term trend channel here, and if you just go by the old long-term trend channel, and you would have said like Bitcoin will do the same what it did here in 2011, in 2013, and in late 2017, you would have said that it's pretty clear that we would get a blow-off top. And in that case, it would have been like a normal type of bull market behavior that we have seen in all cycles before, right? With a normal blow-off top that, as you can see, would have gotten us to 110, 113K. So definitely over 100K. But as we know, the blow-off top never came. This was just freaking missing, right? So Bitcoin's behavior is not as bullish or amazing as we would have liked to see. Even more so, if we, for example, see how much higher this all-time high was above this one. This was like at 1200 and this here was at around $32. So we are talking a factor of 37.5 above the all-time high, right? And this all-time high here from late 2017 as compared to the one from late 2013 was about 20,000 divided by 1200, right? Which is still a respectable factor of 16.7, which is about half of 37.5. So if we would say, hey, that logic here will continue and the next cycle top will be half that value above the old one, so 16.7 divided by 2 times 20,000, we would have expected a top around the area of 160K, 160 to 170K. But what did we get instead? We got a meager 65K here, and then in that fake out bounce here we went to 69K. That was what we got. So Bitcoin's performance is not as amazing anymore as we would like it to be, so therefore I switched to this very conservative long-term channel. But still, it is not out of the question that we could at least get some move like this one here, where unexpectedly, suddenly we go into a new powerful rally and hit 130K by early 2023. This would at least be quite nice, right? Because then we wouldn't have to wait until 2025 or something for the next halving, which is really far away, until we go into the next cycle top in late 2025 or early 2026 at around 300K. That is quite far away. So what would need for that to happen, right? What would need to happen? Well, of course, friends, it's quite clear that the stock market would need to pump. That is the first absolute prerequisite, okay? This is not optional. This is not like would be nice to have. This is an absolute prerequisite for Bitcoin to make new all-time highs. This means the stock market, by some weird reason, must suddenly and unexpectedly make new all-time highs. Because if the stock market just continues going down and we get this really bad economic situation continuing and we go into a recession, then there's no way, friends, there's no way that Bitcoin will continue rallying. In fact, if that happens, we can be quite lucky. We can call ourselves lucky if Bitcoin would even remain in this long-term trend channel here. We could call ourselves lucky if Bitcoin remains in this trend channel and doesn't actually break even this very, very conservative trend channel and goes to insanely low values. We could call ourselves extremely lucky if Bitcoin would remain in that trend channel. So this is an absolute prerequisite for Bitcoin to pump would really be that the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, Dow Jones, they all continue making new all-time highs. But as we know, currently everyone is super bearish. Everyone is expecting this to continue. Like we are going into recession. You see it on all the interviews. Everybody's saying recession, recession. All the media are talking about recession. There's only talk about recession, right? But what would need to happen actually for a contrarian move that nobody is expecting? Well, For that to happen, friends, of course, either the world economic situation dramatically improves and the war in Ukraine is over and China is going away from their idiotic lockdown policy, right? That is one scenario, but there's another one, friends. There's another one. If the Ukraine crisis and the China situation is not resolved, we could still, under one circumstance, get such a rally which would tempt Bitcoin and the crypto market to make new all-time highs sooner than we expect. And that is, friends, if the Fed would pivot. What do I mean by that? By that, friends, I mean that the Fed is raising the Fed funds rate, as we know, right? Look at this. The Fed is raising the Fed funds rate. So this is like the interest rate that is currently being raised at an insanely high speed. We see that this is the highest speed with which the interest rate has ever been raised. And the Fed is aggressively tightening, that is called tightening, raising the interest rate. And this, of course, is quite brutal for the market because it gets more difficult to make new loans. So companies have more difficulty in raising new money. And that is, of course, as we can imagine, not good for the economy. The dollar, that also makes the dollar stronger. And a strong dollar is, of course, also not good for exports. So the whole economy is kind of getting hammered. And everybody's thinking now that the Fed will just continue hiking. They will just continue hiking to 2, even 3% by early 2023, right? Everybody's saying like this will continue going on aggressively and we are just going to hike. And that, of course, would be super bad for the market. But if the Fed realizes that they are crashing the market, and if the Dems say, hey, presidential elections are not insanely far away, like 2 years away now, it wouldn't be so nice if you would crash the market. Jerome, maybe it wouldn't be so nice if you would crash the market down and put us into a recession, because then we would certainly lose the presidential election, right? So I could imagine that even though inflation, okay, let's look at inflation. So even though inflation is running pretty hot, we can see there were phases where inflation were even quite a lot higher than it is now. So the Fed might say, do we really want to crash the economy? And then in the next presidential election, it is pretty likely that the Dems will lose and the Republicans will win. Or will they say, maybe it's good not to completely crash the economy. We raise the interest rates just a bit. We pause now for a while and then we let inflation run hotter than usual, but it will come down because we raised the rates a bit. So probably it will come down and it will stay at 3, 4, 5% for a while. Would this be such a bad scenario if, on the other hand, we will not completely crash the economy? And if that happens, if the Fed turns direction, and that turning of direction by 180 degrees is called pivot, if the Fed would pivot and suddenly say, you know what, we are stopping raising the interest rates, right? We are just stopping. We will make a pause. We will look, we did a bit, let's go into logarithmic. We raised a bit, we did something, so we're not completely inactive, but the danger that we crash the economy is too high, so now we will just not raise much, and if we raise just a very, very little bit, and then we just stay like this. It's not so unrealistic to think that, and nobody is pricing that in, friends. Nobody's pricing that in. If we look at what is priced into the market, so if we want to find out what is priced into the S&P 500, NASDAQ, and so on and so forth, then we can see that this nice Fed funds rate watch tool of the CME group tells us that 98.7% of the people think that there will come at least a 50 basis point hike, but this year actually is a 75 basis point hike expected for the 27th of July for the next meeting, okay? 98.7% of the market is expecting a 75 basis point hike, so a hike by a 0.75% interest rate. Only 1.3%, friends, are expecting a 50 basis point hike. Only 1.3%. So if the Fed would pivot and would go even below this and would say, guys, you know what? We are not even doing a 50 basis point hike. We are only doing a 25 one or none at all. You can imagine what the reaction of the market would be. I can tell you, friends, this would be a face melting event. This would be a face melt rally, which unlike anything you have ever seen. This would be like really like here in March 2020. We could just, I'm serious friends, we could just copy this stuff here and overlay it. We could just copy it and overlay it. That's how insane this rally would be. It would be crazy. It would be absolute insane rally, and we would directly go from this ugly scenario where we're in right now to a rally directly to new all-time highs. Directly to new all-time highs. But of course, the fundamental problems will not be solved. So it could be that afterwards we would get another brutal drop. And that will be interesting to see, of course, if we then make new lows or kind of just go sideways-ish. That is, of course, too early to tell right now. But that is my scenario. What would need to happen if the world economic problems right now due to Ukraine and China are not resolved? That's what would need to happen for us to get a strong Bitcoin rally, because we know just how very much correlated Bitcoin has become to the Nasdaq and to the stock market in general. It is super correlated. We can see just how very much correlated Bitcoin and the Nasdaq have become. And therefore, for a new rally to happen, we see that Bitcoin only rallied when the Nasdaq was also pumping. Never did Bitcoin rally when the Nasdaq was dropping. We can see that when the Nasdaq was actually dropping, as here in 2018, Bitcoin was also dropping. Here, March 2020, Bitcoin was also dropping. Now here, of course, the very same situation, Nasdaq dropping, Bitcoin dropping. So in order for Bitcoin to pump, the Nasdaq and the stock market in general must pump. And that, friends, can only happen if the Fed is pivoting. And there are many people thinking that such a pivot will actually happen. But of course, many people also say that it will not happen, and the Fed are crazy psychos and are just continuing to raise until they crash the entire economy and we just keep dropping lower and lower and go into a brutal recession. So it will be interesting to see what will happen at the next Fed meeting, friends. The countdown is going. 27th of July is when the magic will happen. And we shall see if the Fed will really raise aggressively, as some people believe, or if they will go pivoting. And if they will pivot, I can tell you, friends, in late July, the party will be back. If they pivot, bam, there will be an insane party, an insane rally in the stock market and crypto market. That is my current picture. That is, friends, what would need to happen for us to resume this rally and to go on and resume this uptrend, and suddenly we just pump to 130,000 or above 100,000 within the next 6 to 12 months. That is my current view, friends. If something should change, I will of course let you know. And every day I will take a look at the market, at the current situation. So I would be, of course, very happy if you would like this video and even subscribe to this channel, so that we can go this journey together and find out what Bitcoin and crypto will do in general. Where is it headed? Of course, we will take a look at many indicators, at the stock market, at everything that you can imagine, so that we might have a small advantage, a small edge over the market. Thanks for watching, friends. Have a nice day and see you in the next video tomorrow. Bye.